Hey y'all, it's Marcus. Back in May, I had a vision. I felt like I was in a tavern or pub setting. I was sitting at a high top bar style table, and across from me was an unknown man with brown or reddish brown hair and a somewhat scruffy look. He said something to me in a foreign language and then in English asked me if I understood. When I told him no, with a menacing smirk, he emphatically said, "Out with the fucking maple leaf." I immediately knew that the foreign language he spoke was French. I replayed the original phrase in my mind and realized that the first word he said was au revoir, which is a common way to say goodbye in French. So, in a more casual sense, the original phrase was say goodbye to the maple leaf. I woke up and immediately recorded this in my notes. I believe this vision was revealing undercover plans. We know that sometimes plans fail, so I don't believe that this is saying something must happen, especially if we watch and pray, but could potentially occur. I had this vision while in the state of consciousness between sleep and wakefulness. People use many names for this half-sleep state. I have a friend who refers to it as twilight. Regardless, this is the state where I've received some of the most precise communications from the Spirit. I believe this is the state that Peter fell into when he had the vision with the unclean animals on the sheet. When we interpret dreams and visions, we often look at the symbolic elements within the dream. Most times, biblical symbolism will be the correct approach for interpretation. Still, sometimes God will use symbolism unique to the receiver. A tavern, to me, represents devising military plans. This is because I served 10 years in the United States Marine Corps, which was birthed in an establishment called Ton Tavern in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The tone the man spoke with felt like he was letting me in on a dark, secretive plan. As you may know, modern-day Canada was once part of a French territory known as New France. Over 20% of Canada's population today still speak French as their first language. You may have heard the term French Canadian before, a person whose ancestors were French settlers in what is now the province of Quebec. The man in my vision spoke French, meaning he could be a French-speaking man from one of many countries, including Canada. However, there are some reasons why I believe the man was from France or represented France. Let's take a look. Earlier this year, within a month of each other, two people I'm subscribed to shared visions of fallen entities coming to the earth, one of them specifically seeing these entities land in France.
On the 16th of this month, I was in prayer. And as I started praying, it was like my vision was just transported out of space. I was transported out of space, and I began to see an asteroid out of space. My vision was completely zoomed in on this asteroid. And I'm watching this asteroid just spin in outer space. Then all of a sudden, I'm taken back from the asteroid, and I'm shown another asteroid, which was so strange. I'll talk about this a little bit more later. But this particular asteroid, it was orbiting the planet of Venus. It was going around the planet of Venus. Then I came back to the Earth. And when I came back to the Earth, all of a sudden I could see like an asteroid come into the Earth, and it landed in like a residential area. But this residential area was like a high rise where, they have the high rise residentials, maybe like a downtown city. It landed there. But I knew the very country that it landed in was France. So I saw this asteroid land in France. And then I began to see additional fallen stars that were coming like in order, in an orderly fashion. And I knew as I was looking at this vision, I've dealt with this enough to know what it meant. It meant that fallen angels were coming on the face of the earth, and their intended place to arrive is France.
Hi everyone, in this video I'd like to share a prophetic dream that I had in 2021. It's a dream about giants, or maybe they were fallen angels. I'm not sure what they were, but anyway, they arrived as if they were gods in quotes, okay?
The first clip was published on April 20th, the second on May 20th, and my vision was on May 27th. At the end of June, protests and rioting broke out in France. I've since heard someone say that what's going on over there is the work of fallen angels. But why France of all places?
Gabriel then says this to me. He says, Europe will be strengthened. Russia will be weakened. America will be weakened. And the Asian nations will form an alliance and be strengthened. And watch Israel, for great turmoil will come to Israel and Russia. And what begins with peace will end in utter destruction. Quoting Thessalonians, when they're saying peace, peace, sudden destruction comes upon them. So that's the 5th of October. The next day, we should see something, right? Here's the next day's headlines. This isn't Christian anything. October the 6th, Europe's leaders gather in Prague, but Russia isn't invited. That the French president, Emmanuel Macron, who I believe at least is an Antichrist figure, I believe it's stronger than that. I was shown his face in 2001 by Gabriel. 2001, December. Gabriel tells me in 4 days, not all day, but 4 days. I don't think I could have taken more than the time I had. He says, keep your eyes on these 4 nations. Greece is going to want another Alexander the Great. Italy's going to want an emperor. Spain is going to want a queen. And France is going to want a Napoleon. When he said France, a face came right up in front of me. I can see it as plain as I can see Chris's right there, only closer. This is 2001. I knew that this man that I'm looking at from France is the Napoleon to which Gabriel had just referred me to. The scene changes, and I watch as the Pope declares that man to be God on earth in Europe. When he said that, millions of Catholics rose up and said, no, he isn't God on earth. And the bloodletting began. The scene switched to where I saw a motorcade, black cars, one white. And this man I saw the face of was coming into Jerusalem. And they were throwing branches in front of the motorcade and crying, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. While this France leader was in the open in the motorcade. Emmanuel Macron refers to himself as Napoleon directly. That has already occurred. Refers to himself as Jupiter. When I saw him, I did not see him at the age he was. He's only 44. I did not see him at his age then. I saw him at his age he is now. Back to what happened on October the 6th, the next day. I feel prompted of the Lord to look at the headlines coming out of Europe, and particularly Emmanuel Macron. Europe's leaders gather in Prague, but Russia isn't invited. 44 nations were brought together. It is said here, you can read the article, it is the brainchild of Emmanuel Macron. The next day, they meet in Prague, has a history. That city has a very evil history. Let's say it that way. They meet in Prague. Emmanuel Macron pushing for, as he has done, he and Boris Johnson spoke about this months ago, just so you'll know, using the Latin language, calling for the revived Roman Empire. Emmanuel Macron. Calling for a military, a Europe that has its own military combined. So the 6th is followed on the 7th by another headline, Macron takes center stage in Europe. Can you say the rider of the white horse was released on the 5th? Indeed he was.
That man's name is Terry Bennett, and I became aware of him by way of sharing at Now Daily Bread. When I heard him speak, I didn't discern any falsehood. I definitely believe it's something to be mindful of. He said that the angel Gabriel told him that France will want another Napoleon, and Emmanuel Macron has referred to himself as such. Napoleon was a conqueror. Think of that in light of my vision. The powers that be love to worship their God on world stages at events and ceremonies where billions of people are watching. Next year, the greatest sporting event on earth, the Summer Olympics, will be hosted in none other than Paris, France. Many things are pointing to France right now. We must be prayerfully watchful and avoid ignorance of the things that are happening in the earth, because we are definitely living in the last days. Right before sitting down to record this video, I had the thought to research the relationship between France and India. That's because this week there was an international incident between India and Canada. It was interesting to find that France and India have not only had a relationship for centuries, but it's so special that in recent times France has been referred to as India's best friend. You know how best friends are. I don't like you if you don't like my friend. I want to pause here and say that I realize that France and Canada are also allies, but remember, my vision gave the sense of secretive plans, undercover plans. Sure, it may be petty, but that's what alliances are. And India accusing Canada of harboring terrorists is no small thing. I've served in a war predicated on that. I acknowledge that this may have nothing to do with my vision, but at the same time, it may have everything to do with my vision. My seer gifting most operates by spiritually connecting seemingly unrelated events, or what I refer to as perception. So we will continue to watch and pray concerning the situation. If you got anything out of this video, consider giving it a like and sharing it with someone. I'm approaching ministry through YouTube full force because I believe I've walked through an open door since Rosh Hashanah last week. So your support is much appreciated. A special shout out to 2 of my Canadian, if not French Canadian subscribers with whom I've developed a relationship this past year, Nancy and Michael. If you have time, check out one of the videos on the screen. Stay close to the Lord, and as always, be blessed.